Some have dubbed this the modern-day Exorcist. Others call it Spain's answer to the Conjuring series. That's not too bad an analogy to draw. Many have apparently been unable to sit through it in its entirety because it's been that horrific and terrifying to them. They just have been terrified beyond belief. But for everyone in that side is someone on the other side going, it was alright, or I don't really enjoy it. I didn't think it was that scary. So is this idea that it's that terrifying a marketing ploy? Or are there just, is there just a natural divide of people like with any horror film? As a fan of the genre, I feel that, you do bring a lot of your own subjectivity to it. Your own life experiences, things you've seen before, whether they be true or fictional, will inform how you react to other works down the line. As a species, we have evolved this trait to basically survive, taking information and using it heuristically to help us survive down the line. But I think some of that could factor into this terror idea that's sort of permeated through it and given it the attention that it has garnered. I think the fact that it's based on a real life case in the early 90s in Spain, which is also when the film is set, has lent it a bit more weight to people. So I think where people thought, The Exorcist could have been real, that's what lent it a lot of its terror. I think we're seeing a very similar situation with Veronica. I've probably said that awfully, but Spanish obviously isn't my first language, and I do apologise. I'm not going to butcher too many names. I just want to give a shout for the director, Paco Plaza, and of course Veronica herself, Sandra Escacena. And I do have to mention Ivan Chavero, who plays Antonito. Such a great little kid, and I'm sure he will go far. But that's all of the Spanish names that I'm going to butcher, I sort of promise. I may have to come out with more later, but I'll try to avoid it. I don't want to offend anyone. So I think the best way to tackle this is to look at the film on its own merits and then sort of analyse the case and bring them together and see how much of it really did inform. I mean, I know Paco Plaza has said over time there was less of a direct, one-to-one correlation, as much out of respect as anything. And it did also change the name of the film, rather than referring explicitly to that case, to the name of the character. But like I say, we are tackling the film first, so a brief rundown. I will get to cliches, because there are a few of them in this, unfortunately. It does bring it down a little for me, but they're, the shorthands we've come to expect. But yeah, the film basically starts with three girls trying to contact the boyfriend of one of them who died in a motorbike accident, very closely similar to the case. And they do it under an eclipse. Like I say, there are cliches. And the glass smashes, and Veronica seems to be now carrying this demon, spirit, whatever it may be, although she doesn't necessarily realise that. As far as she's aware, she's brought an entity back through. She sort of dragged them over as a separate being, not within her. But over time, the girls really stop wanting to be around her. They seem to be getting a closer friendship together, even though one of them was a sort of added one and she didn't really want her there. The dynamics have changed. They're kind of terrified really of her, and her family's suffering. I mean, her mum has to work pretty much constantly. She's effectively, as the older daughter, taking care of the younger siblings, and it does happen. It's happened throughout life in particularly impoverished areas where families are really just having to work so much just to make ends meet that the elder child is, taking on so much more responsibility. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, is obviously subjective. I would say that generally it's a bad thing because they've also got to be kids too. But needs must, and this is what Veronica's kind of life is. She's secondary mother, and she really sees how much of an effect it's having on her family, and she wants to make it right. She wants to fix this. Her heart is in the right place, her motivation is correct, but she doesn't know what to do. It isn't something you can just walk into a random place and go, hey, someone help me with this. It's not like getting your car fixed. But there is one person who can help, and this is sort of big cliche number 2, I guess. The blind nun. It's really become a cliche, I think, in the last few years. But she's the one who makes the most sense. She tells her what to do, she guides her. And even during the scene when she does give her the most help, she's carted out saying, just ignore her, she's clearly loopy. But she's actually talking sense, she's helping her out here. And, she kind of guides her towards the idea of she needs to close the session. Again, another big cliche. Particularly in recent years, again, of closing the session of a seance, otherwise that's when the entities really cause problems. So, she's trying to get the gang back together, as it were, to close it off and, just basically repair this wound, this big, deep scar that's ripping her family apart and really, causing her younger siblings a lot of distress. And she can't seem to get any help with it, manages to try and get it done with the kids. And it's where the big climax of the film happens. It's possibly the most scary section of the film. But, she also gets one of the big sad revelations, I think. Because all throughout she's thought that there was an additional body, like I said earlier. There's an additional thing that's come through. And it's walking around and terrorising her family. But there's certain lines that are said to her, like, why were you choking me? Well, I wasn't. I was saving you, and little interactions like that, and she has this realization that no, it's me. The problem is me. I'm the thing that is causing this. Even though she's not doing it consciously, she knows that it's something that is working through her, and she knows that she has to make the ultimate sacrifice. And it's, like I say, really sad and a really well done revelation. It was one of my favourite moments of the entire film. It was telegraphed, it was pretty obvious. You could figure it out as you went along. But it was so well done, and I think, like I say, Sandra's portrayal of this, how she acted it, I think just really sold it. This broken... It's kind of like a broken spirit with a strong resolve, which is very hard because those kind of things are often opposite to each other, you'd think. But she plays it so well. She knows what she has to do, but she doesn't want to. And she tries to rescue her family, and do what she can to make this right. And I do love the way that it closes with something that's very similar to the factual report, the real report that was done by the attending detective. Where he said that I never would have thought that I'd put this in a police report, that it's very likely something paranormal is going on here. And, it's a great way to close it out because it brings it back into that this was based on a real event. But I think that's what we need to look at next. What was the inciting incident really to create this film? So let's go back to August of 1991. And the Vallecas case, I hope I said that close to right, which culminated in the death of Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro, and I hope I've got that close to right too. What started out as just very similarly to the film, a seance to try and contact the ghost of one of the girl's boyfriends who had died in a motorcycle accident, pretty much exactly as in the film, became so much more. In this situation, rather than being interrupted by the smashing glass, it was actually a teacher who found them, and according to reports from the parents, they actually saw kind of a black smoke enter into her body through her mouth and nose. And shortly after, she was having seizures, hallucinations, and, reports were generated by doctors. They were trying to find out what's the cause of this? Is there a psychiatric cause, a neurological cause perhaps for the seizures? Various tests were tried, but there was nothing that could give a reason. None of these reports had anything to give them anything to go on. And ultimately she did pass away. But that wasn't the end of the story. Unlike the film, it didn't end with her death. It was down the line where, sort of months after, doors would slam of their own accord. Shadowy figures were seen wandering around, and with no explanation. Similarly to the end of the film, a photo of Estefania just burst into flames. It was obviously terrifying. But one of the most terrifying events was the fact that one night her mother was kind of lying in bed feeling a pressure on her chest, kind of like the hag night terror idea, someone sitting on your chest. but then there were hands trying to grab her feet and her hands, and obviously, she thought maybe this is, we've got an intruder. Could have been someone in there, and she called the police, got them on board, and they looked around the property. There were various things in disarray. A crucifix was upside down. There was posters torn off the walls. It was just quite horrific looking, and they sat in a room and just heard this blood-curdling scream from behind on the balcony when no one was there. At early hours of the morning, it was about 2:30, and this is such a terrifying thing to witness. It's not something you expect as a police officer to have to deal with. So as you can tell, it isn't a one-to-one, blow-by-blow account of the facts, and like I said before, I think that's the most respectful way to do it, rather than having their entire lives just portrayed and slightly fictionalised. They've fictionalised more than they haven't. They're just giving it, sort of basis, of the original story. I think that was a good move. But it does lead to the real two questions we do need to answer with this film. Is it the most terrifying thing in existence? And how does it work as a piece of entertainment? So, I would say no, it's not the most terrifying film in existence. I've seen things that have unsettled me more. It didn't have pointless and unearned jump scares, which is always a bonus in my book. But that doesn't mean that it's the most scary film in existence, just because it didn't have those. Because they lessen the overall scare quality. But I don't think it was that terrifying. I wasn't seeing shadow figures in the corner as I was meandering around the flat or anything like that. But on the subject of it being a piece of entertainment, then yeah, I think it was decent. I mean, IMDb's got it, I think, lower than it should be as of me recording this. It's about 6.3 if I recall. I'd probably say maybe 7 to 8 in that range. I think that'd be fair. I don't normally rate these films, but if I had to, I'd call it somewhere in that window. And Rotten Tomatoes, I think, is about 80 something again. It's about right. It's not amazing. It's telegraphed moments, but it's not bad. And if you go into it not expecting the most terrifying film in existence, I think you'll enjoy it a lot more. So I think that's all for this week. I do hope you join me next week, because there's a couple of things that have come out recently that I really need to get round to. So hopefully one of those will be coming up very soon. But until next time, as always, take care.